Good evening. Welcome to Defacto Review, a weekly in-depth analysis into the news and current affairs here in Mongolia with our commentator and economist, Jargal Defacto.
Good evening.
And I'm Anand Tumurtov for MNB World. You can join in on the conversation on Twitter with the hashtag Jargal_Defacto, and you can watch us live on Facebook on MNB World. Today on our program, an Erdenet mine investigation report sufficient. President Batoluk calls for dissolution of parliament for the second time. And lastly, what were the takeaways from the 2019 Eurasian Media Forum? For our first story, earlier this week, the government of Mongolia presented the results of the investigation of the enterprise involved in the corruption allegations. The chairman of the Cabinet Secretariat, Oyurden, presented a report on the investigation of the Development Bank of Mongolia. The chairman also led the working group that conducted the investigation. And the chairman reported that he will be transferring the confiscated materials to the appropriate law enforcement agencies, namely the Independent Authority Against Corruption. Also, the Ministry of Finance, Hurlbatar, said the results of the investigation of the Erdenet mine show that there might have been interests of conflict present, and added he'll also be passing the relevant law enforcement agencies. And Oyurden confirmed while conducting the investigation that Mongol Rosvestneft was found to be facing financial difficulties. So, regarding Development Bank of Mongolia's investigation, Oyurden said there were a number of conflicts of interest that were revealed. So the question now is, who should be held accountable for these conflict of interests?
That's what we expect, because what this investigation showed us is in principle nothing new. We knew that. It was a previous number of reports before about the unhealthy situation of the Development Bank of Mongolia, which was founded several years ago to finance projects, infrastructure projects mostly, which takes a long-term return, which at the end turned out not doing exactly as the people planned to have that development bank.
Yeah, we talked about this previously also.
Yes, and what is new now is it says that there were, for example, mismanagement, some loan were reconsidered 8 times, restructured also. And also the development bank bought office, 2 floors from the Development Bank of Mongolia, Trade and Development Bank of Mongolia, very expensive. Expensive means the whole building on the Peace Avenue total cost was 28 billion tugrik. And they sold it for the 28 billion tugriks. Just 2 floors to Development Bank. And the other thing was, again, the old names, but former Minister of Economics, Mr. Batbayar, Minister of Industry, Mr. Erdenet, etc. Few officials' names came out again. But what is new today, they have given it to an anti-corruption agency.
Yes.
And before anti-corruption agency was not accepting that, and they were transferring the case, they never properly investigated and then transferring the file to the court. And this time, after finally we changed the head of the anti-corruption agency, new person expected to do as he promised, to fight for justice. Let's see how he will be fighting for justice. But responsibility, I mean, that's the issue, who will take it. But very funny thing about responsibility is 2 different understandings existing among people and politicians. People would expect, and do expect, that get our money back. If they have stolen, misused, then let's get back. Because there should be some assets they could not eat the money in cash. So there have been something that we need to get back. That's we understand, taking responsibility.
Yeah.
But the politicians, and in particular the justice system of the country, understands differently. They arrest somebody, then they release.
Yes. Then
once again ask arresting, and the procureur is not giving the permission.
Yes.
It's like mouse and cat thing happening.
Yes.
And the question recently, Mr. Horst was former General Intelligence Agency head, was released after
Yes, he was also
2
the
weeks.
head of the Independent Authority Against Corruption also.
Yeah, and the question comes, why you are arresting people who have not done anything? The second question, why you are releasing people if they have done wrong things? They have stolen our money. Non-answer the current government of Mongolia cannot give. So we are very disappointed, and hopefully the people, and hopefully this time it will be a little bit different picture, and our responsibility, understanding finally may merge one day. At least that's the expectation. That's why we changed the country changed the speaker. They changed the new Mr. Oyun now is to new position. He's a cabinet secretary, cabinet chair of the cabinet, right?
Yes, cabinet
and
secretary.
then we have a new speaker. So
Yes.
of all these things, so the result I expected to come. The result of making more justice in the society, so that the politicians are not stealing the property and going without punishment, without taking any responsibility.
So for that, I think it's basically the system is flawed, and no matter who you change, it just keeps on going.
Correct. That's why the system is to be changed. In particular, state-owned enterprises' culture is to be changed. It is not the culture. It is not to be. These are not created for stealing and siphoning our property to somebody, private property. And it's very easy to change the situation. They just follow the corporate social responsibility standard of the world.
Yeah.
They should have selecting board members also on a selective, competitive basis. And board basis who are selected that way is to make a contract with the executive director or CEO for long term, but with the condition that they review the performance result every year. That's it. And instead, what they do, they nominate everybody whom they know, whom they think they will protect their interests. As a result, people's interests are protected by nobody.
Yes.
That's why the economy is stagnant, and there is no competition, and that's why the small companies are disappearing, bankrupt, though it's very hard to file bankrupt file in Mongolia. And so these companies started to just close, and no zero balance, etc. And the people are running away to Korea.
And during the report, it was said that there was some tax violations into Erdenet mine. Can you
Not
tell us?
only. They made another investigation in Erdenet
Yes.
as a whole. 49% was bought by a group headed by Erdenet, who is the owner, majority 95% owner of TDB Bank.
Yes, Trade Development Bank Mongolia.
And what happened was they bought it from Russia with public money.
Yes.
And they think they own money, but there were, for example, 2 companies out of 9, 2 companies, Hutul and QGS. These 2 companies both belong to this guy, this man, got the money and they never paid back. One term is finished for one loan, the other have not finished yet, but altogether about almost 200 trillion tugriks, which is almost the cost of half of at least the cost they bought Erdenet from Russians. So once they bought the Erdenet 49% with public money, they should give to the public that share, which they are refusing. And I'm afraid it would cost too much for them as for us, because if they fail the TDB Bank, it's a big problem for the economy. It's the largest bank in the country. They should not, as a responsible people, as a responsible citizens, if they are intelligent enough, they should not go to all the way through to that point. So what happened in Erdenet is again that since the 49% came, you know what they made?
What?
The CEO is now just responsible for human resources, but the legal director is responsible for all operations. And the legal director is nominated by them. What they did, they have again bought the largest in history of the Erdenet, 2 large purchases from 2 companies that belong also to this Mr. Erdenet. And now still they are payable to them. And also they took dividend immediately, paid to themselves immediately. Although the dividend is nothing to do with them, it is to former 49% of Russians. And what they did, they have not paid tax. That's what you were asking.
Yes, yes.
They have no tax from that dividend income, because like in other cases, you always pay, get 10% less, and then pay to the government for that income, additional income revenue. So that's two things they have violated, as they say. But the issue is, so what? What will happen afterwards? It was happening before, these discussions we know, but the problem is now with Erdenet and Erdenet 51% and 49%, these are the plays of our high-ranking politicians. If they agree to go ahead, it's very hard, because it will cost each of them a lot of money and a lot of reputation. So I don't know actually how much this performance will go ahead. I look at it just as a big show.
Like a big show, just showing the people that we're doing something just. Maybe.
Yeah, it's a vain, because we were expecting so much. We are expecting so much from this last change from Mr. Zandan Shatar, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Oyun Erden. So hopefully next week there will be something. Actually, something will be moving, and the result of all this movement, we want to get our money back, the stolen money. That's all.
So what is the big takeaway from these two reports, basically? Can you maybe sum it up for our viewers?
It is governance issue.
Governance issue?
Yes, quality of government, public government is so low. It is being manipulated by just one dead person, for example, for years. And he was financing all two political parties' campaign financing, which is secret. Nobody is disclosing from the political parties how much money they get from him and from others. As a result, the corruption come too big, too large, too everywhere, that now we cannot stop it. And it's very bad, because if we cannot stop this corruption, this economy will not grow, and people will never be living better. Poverty will be increasing, which will bring inequality. At the end, it will remember big social conflicts.
Well, speaking of corruptions, I'm moving on to our second topic. The president sees that the parliament is ripe with corruption, and last October he actually criticized parliament had become ineffective, and the president proposed the parliament dissolve itself. And this week, the president also proposed that he also reinstated his previous claims and said that the parliament has made no improvements since they were last called to the task. And last week, the president vetoed a package of tax reforms the parliament had passed. According to the finance minister, the president vetoed a law that was already rendered invalid, basically. And the minister of finance said it was impossible to accept the presidential veto. So from these two statements, was the presidential veto of the tax reforms justified, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, they have confused the title. That was very funny. Second, there are some rationales.
You mean the president?
Yeah, president office.
Yeah.
And what does it show? That our president institutions, like in the government institutions, like in the legislation institutions, are not developed to the level of institution. They're still weak. Depends on person, one person mistake, title, confusing. So it shows that Mongolian politics, Mongolian government, Mongolian state is not making decisions based on the research or evidence-based. They are mostly doing just emotional-based, political ambition-based, and just for the sake of destroying the opposition, not for the creating new value for ordinary Mongolians. Clear example is this.
No proper discourse.
Yes, and as institutions, Mongolian state government is not getting stronger just because all people working there, coming there, based on not talent or merit. It's based on how they're close to the head of the political party, who manages all money. He's like a treasurer. Because the money coming to the political party's coffin, Nobody knows better than him. Maybe 2, 3 deputies or somebody close. As a result, he became a head of mafia. And he gets money and he knows how. And he's the only guy who is distributing money. So all the members of the political party in Mongolia becoming a member of mafia, where they don't know where money comes from. And I mean, exactly, that's physically, I mean, literally, that they don't know. And why they are not asking. And that's another question. It's a consciousness issue. So in Mongolia, we need to make policy evidence-based, which requires research, which requires certain investment from the public management side.
So are you saying that the office of the president was very negligent and maybe incompetent also?
Yeah, I mean, all Mongolian offices are, but in this case, in particular, the president offices are confusing even the names. And we don't go even to the content.
Yes.
If we go to content, there are a couple points where they, for example, the veto reasoning was there are 10% tax was this goes to 5% for those who are investing in Mongolia. But the actual situation is like this. Mongolia, our financial market, if it's consisting of two, capital market and money market, we 95% depend on banking. So we need to develop the other 5%. In normal countries, it would be 5 and 5, 50 and 50, 1 to 1. And why they are not having this 5% increase? Because there is no incentives. The people, if I buy, as foreigner, buy, say, shares on Mongolian stock exchange, from the dividend I got from, if I get from my revenue, from my shares, I need to pay 10%, which is unfair. So they are decreasing. If I pay on that income 5%, it is more incentives for me. This sort of explanation was from two sides. But anyway, even the government, they are not doing based on institutions. The research, as a result, Mongolian laws, like this law, you have an age of, I don't know, only a few months, some of them even 2 months. For example, VAT tax, mining tax, education, VAT law, mining law, education law. For the last 10 years, they have been average 16 times changed, and total 300 provisions are changed.
Yes.
What is the law if they would change every 2 months? What does it show? They have no clue about what they do. If they do it for their own purpose or for certain interests of certain oligarchs, certain group. Because the law should be done, for 20, 30 years. Yeah. And so if the law is changed every 2 months, how you do expect the policy staying stable? Yeah. If not a stable policy, then what do you expect investment, not only from foreigners, but also on Mongolians? Yeah. Why they would invest into the sector where the rule of game play changed every day?
Yeah, that showed when the mining law was changed with gold, and artisanal miners stopped giving gold to the Mongol bank.
Yeah, because the law is to be also adherent to the reality.
Yes.
And what is the point if you have a law that you cannot enforce?
Yes, yes.
In particular gold, huh? Yeah. And we have such a big land, and such a big border with China. There is not everywhere soldiers they can cross-sell, and that's what's happening.
So, yes, this week the president also addressed that parliament to call for their dissolution, basically. And so has parliament lost its legitimacy? He called for dissolution for the second time now.
Looks like everybody has lost legitimacy. This week, very interesting. President demanded the parliament dissolved. One parliament member suggested the president himself dissolved. And the people in the street, in the cars, they have required or protested against government, and they asked government to be dissolved. So everybody is dissolving each other.
Yes,
so what does it mean? Take it, for example, for the government. Government pretending or gave the wrong impression to the people that they can control price. They cannot control price.
They shouldn't do, right?
But they have made the people believe that the government can control. Now they are demanding the decrease of price when the price in the world of gas coming
Yeah.
up,
And
gasoline.
also meat. Yeah.
Meat also,
Yeah.
yeah. And the market should regulate that.
Yeah.
And as a result now, people are demanding from the government something that they cannot do.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. President had been investigated before he became a candidate for the presidency. And then the whole file is closed. All the related other files, this 280 kilometers railway, spending 280 also, $70 million, and we don't know where the money is, and why, where's our money? Give us back.
Yeah.
So, or then the parliament.
Yeah.
Parliament. Recently, majority of the parliament member have been misusing our fund for SME support.
Yes, exactly.
And that, remember you and me have been talking for quite some time.
Yes,
here.
yes.
It was remembered that out of 76, 50 members were connected with that loan.
Yeah.
Then in a month it became 30. Now it became another 20. And I think by this speed, by the end of the year, nobody is related, and we had all the wrong dream, or we had all.
But we have documents, we have facts that shows that they did take money from those.
You know how many facts we have. The issue is what are they doing, what kind of actions they're doing with that facts.
Yeah.
And this country is not able to enforce their laws.
By facts.
Particular by the look at the politicians.
Yes.
So that's why we have all this crisis in economics, created by the mismanagement of common value, common properties. And now everybody is paying for that. Those who don't understand completely, they run away from the country to work in Korea. And those inside lost their jobs. Yeah. And with that, with this kind of changes, where are the jobs? Who are creating? Private sector is creating jobs. And how you can create jobs when the government is controlling even the price? Yeah. So that's what I might take.
Mm-hmm. So this is just basically a show for the solution. The government should actually do something rather than just pretend. Okay, we should move on to our next topic. The 2019 Eurasian Media Forum was held in Almaty, and hosts the forum's 3-day program. It seems that technology and digitalization are an integral part of the media sector. And you actually attended this forum, and there were a lot of delegates from all over Europe and Asia. Can you, so in that sense, like, as I said, digitalization and it was an integral part of the media sector. Is the traditional media giving way to social media, basically?
I thought that way.
Yeah.
But it turned out there was a clear demonstration of some certain medias in the world, in Europe, that traditional media, if they do transfer right time with the right path, they can be doing much better than the social media. Why? Because journalists working in traditional media, those who have a responsibility for what they're saying, they will be much faster being known to the audience, to the public, than the social media journalists. So and that was interesting take, and it was a very clear case. I saw a week before I was in European Publishing Congress, and for example, the Netherlands newspaper, financial newspaper called FD.nl, it's now digital. This is a financial newspaper, one of the oldest, because Holland is the first stock exchange or stock exchange country. Yeah. And this newspaper was created in 1796 or so, and after 215 years, they have reinvented themselves into a digital format. Both actually, the paper is coming to interesting format, and now the subscribers increased almost twice as a result. So it is very wrong, though, for those who cannot make digital transfer, then combine both space, digital and paper. If they successfully combine it, they can go ahead much faster and more successful.
So are you saying that there's successful, like, media companies can successfully transfer to digital, and can Mongolian media companies transfer digitally successfully without depending on like ads? Or
The same case was with the Economist. They have also successfully changed their business model, and they are in two: one in paper, in both subscription within on the phone you can read, and they say we are not newspaper anymore. We are viewers paper, so you can view it.
Yeah.
So that's now who stops them to do that? In Mongolia, unfortunately, our media for this small 3 million market, we have almost 500 media outlets, mostly belonging to politicians.
And running with the
Or
laws.
the large corporations have their Mongolian banks have own media, and they are brainwashing when they need it. And even the companies run with the laws, they still keep the company.
Yes,
but there's
exactly.
such a level of margin that the journalists are paid so much, so small, and they are almost starving, I would say. And I don't think they will be successfully transforming. If maybe they will find the money from the rich politicians or the banks and companies, but it doesn't mean that the content-wise they will be successful.
Really?
Why? Because content is dependent on one guy or on somebody else. So I think Mongolian media market is to go through a lot of reform so that if it's very serious competition, so that they fight, and we have as a result less media outlet.
So looking at the bigger picture, what was the level in what was the media level in this region, and what are the main problems that this region is facing at the moment?
There was an interesting panel about integration of Eurasia.
Okay.
Integration, economic integration, political, etc. But they have been talking mostly about the initiatives by the government. All things is led by the government. And I raised a question from the panel that, look, why your people don't talk? Just government talk is not enough. It should be, first of all, people talk. Why? Because it starts from people's communication. Then communication brings to understanding. Understanding only gives you trust.
Yes.
And after trust, you only make integration. Otherwise, it's like the horses before cart. So that was my motion there. I was supported by some speaker there. So I think this Central Asia has not the freedom of people speaking. All media is controlled by the state. It's only Mongolia where we can speak, as now we are on the MNB world, we can talk what we think. It's this part of normal life, right?
Yeah, but we still have some issues in Mongolia in our media sector, as you said.
We do, but however, compared with the Central Asian countries, this is paradise, because for simple things, you express your interests against your points against the interests of the authority. You have problem. And also at nights, even in Kazakhstan, they say they slow internet movement of the internet. There's so slow speed that it's very hard to visit all you want. So that's one way of interference, right? So that's what's happening there.
Okay, unfortunately we have to end it there. Well, that's all the time we have for today on Defacto Review, and we'll see you next week on MNB World.